Are you looking for a way to build an audience and drive traffic that doesn't include paid ads or social media? Well, my guest today is going to share his BOPA strategy and claims you can grow up to $5 million in sales using only this strategy to grow your audience. No paid ads, no content marketing, no social media. And I've personally used this BOPA strategy a few times with great success. Stay tuned to learn more. Well, hey out there and welcome in. I'm your host, Jacques Hopkins, and you found the podcast all about running a successful online course business. I got to tell you, I'm especially pumped about today's episode because I'm talking with a guy that I have followed for many years. His name is Bryan Harris, and he used to run a blog called Video Fruit, where he put together these epic, detailed posts about what's working for selling, launching, online courses, and he has since changed his business name to Growth Tools, and he offers free software tools to help grow your business, lots of free training, and then he's got a high-ticket, high-touch coaching program as well that's called Growth University. Bryan is definitely on the short list of people that have had a huge influence on the success of my businesses, so imagine my surprise and excitement when I got an email from Bryan with a pitch to come on my podcast here. Obviously, I said yes, knowing the value that he'd bring to you all, but also getting the chance to speak with Bryan one-on-one. Now, I teased at the beginning Bryan's BOPA strategy for growing an audience. BOPA stands for borrowing other people's audiences, and that's exactly what he was doing when he reached out about coming on this podcast. BOPA is when you get on other podcasts or do guest blogging or other forms of guest content where you bring value to someone else's audience and hopefully win them over to be part of your audience as well. And I really think this is an underrated audience growth strategy. It's one we teach inside of my coaching program, but we don't teach it as a potential main traffic source like Bryan does. And so he has some really interesting things to say about how that's really all you need when you do it right. So if you're tired of trying ads or cranking out social media content, listen in and consider giving this BOPA strategy a chance. But we don't only talk about BOPA, there's plenty more. We also talk about how a coaching program rather than simply an online course might be a better fit for a lot of people. And he also shares a really cool framework for making money in your business, which he calls the eyeballs, hearts, and wallets framework, which you can start implementing immediately. This is truly a masterclass in online business. Let's dive into it. Bryan Harris, welcome to the Online Course Show.
Thank you for having me here.
Man, it's such an honor. I've been following your stuff. I remember the Video Fruit days. I was like, this is a weird name for a brand, but his content is epic. How did you come up with that brand name?
Naming, not my strong suit. Getting clients for people, I'm decent at that. A lot of other things I suck at. Sorry, what was the question? I was talking about Video Fruit.
Well, that was the question. How did you come up with that name? But I know that's not the name you go by anymore.
Yeah. So early on, the very first thing I sold online was a course on how to make explainer videos. Somehow, I think I read a Tim Ferriss blog article in 2011. It was called How to Create an App Empire. Because at the time, the iOS App Store had just come out. There was a guy named Chad Moretta who wrote a blog post, and I just went deep down that track. Somehow it ended me up with a course on how to make explainer videos, I guess for those apps maybe. And that's the thing I did for the first year or two was learn I had a product and then I had to learn how to get random people to the internet to know I exist and buy it from me. So for the past 12 years now, it's been one long constant experiment in what's the simplest, most efficient way that we could help other people now learn to get people to buy their stuff. And that's been a decade-long pursuit, and I tend to start very simply, get way overcomplicated, and then eventually find my way back to the simple path. And a couple of years ago, we found our way back to the simple path on that. So that's what we do all day is help usually people that teach things online, like coaches and consultants and course creators and membership site people, learn how to get customers for their stuff. So yeah, that's what we do. And the company used to be called Video Fruit because that's what we did and help people make explainer videos. And a few years back, I don't even remember when now, it's been several years ago, we renamed it to something slightly less, slightly more generic and slightly less working against us called Growth Tools. So just our business model, this works nicely now. Our business model is we give away all of our training and all of our tools for free. And then about 1% of those people hire us to coach them on how to successfully deploy those in their business so they get more customers than they had before they hired us. So now we just give away all our tools, all the way our training. We don't sell courses or tools or anything like that, but we make a lot of software, make a lot of training. All that's free on the website. But coaching is the thing that we sell to people. So yeah, that's what the company is now. And now the name actually makes sense versus when you're selling a course on getting customers, but your name is Video Fruit, it actually legitimately confuses people. So pro tip number one on naming something, don't actively confuse people with the name. As long as it's not doing that, it's probably fine.
I think it's Donald Miller that says, when you confuse, you lose. So that makes a lot of sense. I certainly have a lot of questions for you about the business you have currently, but since we're talking about 10, 12 years ago, like I said, I remember those kind of epic blog posts where you just went into excruciating detail about launches and what was working and what wasn't. I remember the post, but I don't remember like what course you were selling. The course you just mentioned, that first one, is that the one that you were, that was the case study for those blogs, I remember?
So a year or so in, I'd sold a couple $1,000s of that little explainer video course. And I actually kind of found a couple marketing channels, or one primary marketing channel accidentally that worked really well. And it was actually a guy who I had bought a course from. I'd been posting updates inside of the Facebook group. And one day I posted like, hey, I've grown my list to 100 email subscribers. And he's like, oh, you should come teach my audience how to do that. Because it had been a long time since he had started a list. He had a big list at the time. It was about 50,000 people. So I just made a resource and gave it to him. He promoted it to his audience, and I got thousands of subscribers. And over the next year, sold a couple $100,000 in product to those people. And that was the first thing I'd done online that had like the sum of the parts were greater than the whole. Somebody who had an established audience promoted me to their audience. Like that just works really well. And after a little while, like I finally just asked those people like, hey, what do you want me to help you with? Like, what's a problem you have that I could solve? And they all wanted to know, like, how did you grow your email list? And at the time, that email list had grown to 5,000 or so. So I made a course about how to grow an email list, launched it, and it did exceptionally well. So for the next half a decade, everything I did was about, and this is somewhat ironic actually, was about how to grow your audience. How do you build an email list specifically? Because in all of my research and all my experimentation, the one thing everyone agreed on was the one thing you need to do is build a list, build an audience and sell to the audience. So that was the first major thing I ever did online, was write blog posts about different experiments I was running, sell a course on list building. What's kind of ironic now is I talked about, I usually start very simply, way outthink the room, and then eventually find my way back to like, what's the like one thing you could do whereby doing it, everything else is easier. And what's interesting now is I wouldn't advise building an email list. I wouldn't advise focusing on building an audience. There's lots of good things you can do with that. But what happened to me and what's happened to clients over the years, when they put their core focus on that, they wind up being professional content creators. And there's a big section of the online world right now, just in the last year or two, that calls themselves creators. And that's awesome. I love that name actually. But what it really means is we post on Instagram like 20 times a day, and we stress out over the quality of like all the content and everything. But none of that's a business. None of that is like actually generating revenue activity stuff. And they think of themselves as content producers, not as like business owners. And content producers will burn out. Content producers will quit. And content producers rarely make money. But business owners make money from day one. So now what I have found my way back to, the primary marketing channel we have as a business at Growth Tools, the primary marketing channel that we help clients install as the first marketing channel, like to get clients, is borrowing other people's audiences versus focusing on building an audiences. And that's the first thing that happened to me. Like accidentally, Noah Kagan was the guy who had the list of 50,000 people, and then it saw me post, and he's like, hey, come make a resource and I'll share it with my audience. And I accidentally grew a list of 2,000 from that. And then the biggest needle moving events over the years to generate sales and generate list building without even focusing on list building has been borrowing other people's audiences. Going to someone like you. You have a podcast of people that have been following you for 7 years and that trust you. By me being here, some people will hear this and be like, oh man, I like that guy. And they'll come to the website and find stuff and eventually hire us. That's great. That's so much easier because it puts your focus on giving away the best things you found. It puts your focus on sharing with other people and helping other people. And all of us can do that without being taught at all. But if you focus on building an audience and all the fancy online marketing stuff, that all has its place, and it's fine to have an email list. Like that'll accidentally happen if you just borrow other people's list. Like you don't even have to try and it'll happen. But if you focus on sales call scripts and email copy and funnels and all this complicated crap. Like you'll most likely quit because it's very hard to do well, or you'll become a world-class marketer. And almost no one I work with actually cares about being a world-class marketer. All they want are people to hire them so they can do the thing they were built to do. So the simplest way to do that is just have other people promote you, borrow other people's audiences. Your audience will grow as a result. Don't focus on building your own. So it's just a fun little meta circle of death thing here now of like looking at the things I taught over the years and the things I did over the years, and they work. They're just hard, and you don't have to do that. If your goal is to teach people how to do stuff, you do not need to focus on becoming a world-class marketer and producing a bunch of content and having all these funnels and trying to grow an audience. Just go to other people's audiences, teach, give, and that stuff will happen as a result. So I don't remember what the original question was now, but that's been my full company and strategic circle over like 12 years. And I probably should have got there in like a year, but here I am.
I don't know what the question was either, but you just ran with it, and I love it. What you're saying, in my opinion, is a little controversial and goes against a lot of the advice that's shared from a lot of the guests that I have on here. People will say, start with your email list, start building your audience, start putting out content, right? And you're coming in saying, that's not always the best way. Here's why. So I'm with you on this borrow other people's audiences idea. It's something I teach my clients to do, but not necessarily as like the main strategy. It's just a strategy that I think works really well. And what I always tell my clients is like, the bar is pretty low for this stuff. I have a podcast. It's not huge, but you wouldn't believe the quality of like podcast pitches that I get. They're awful. And if you put something together halfway decent, and I mean, the key is you can clearly convey what value you're going to provide to my audience, because that's what I'm all about. I want to share valuable information with my audience. Probably going to say yes. But my question for you is if that's the main marketing mechanism you're recommending, for somebody like just getting started, how does that work when we don't have any offers? We don't have any proven results yet, and we don't have much credibility in our niche yet. How does that work?
Yes. So maybe I'll say two things. First, you have to have a thing to sell. So you do have to have an item to sell. I almost universally now with clients, and maybe I'll preface this with this. My filter. So anytime you discover somebody new, and most of you are discovering me new for the first time right now, just know where they're coming from. So you know what to ignore and what to cue into and how to apply that to you. So I'm just going to speak from my experience as a operator and as someone who's coached lots of operators too. So it isn't just like it worked for Bryan, it's worked for them as well. But there's plenty of stuff that'll work. So this isn't like the only path. My filters are, is it really hard to screw up? Meaning if I put A+ effort, but only get C+ results, will I still win? Something like Facebook ads running to a webinar or VSL that goes to a phone call that goes to you become a client. There are 1,000 things you can screw up. You must have A+ execution if that's going to work, or you will waste hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've seen it. I've experienced it firsthand, and I've seen it firsthand many times. So just as compared to what is the question? This might be difficult, but compared to what? And then all of a sudden this might look a lot easier. So my filter number one is it really hard to screw up? Number two, does it feel fun and light when I'm doing it, or does it feel super laborious and like a lot of work? Because man, there's a ton of parts of businesses that are hard, but I want to enjoy like 80% of my role, like thoroughly enjoy it. And 20%, it's okay to hate and despise and whatever. That's fine. But if you ever get out of balance of that too long, like you're just not going to stick with it at all. And it's going to fail. And the third one is, does it work? Not just for one person who has a fancy case study and talks about it, but like if I look at the grand scope of 100 humans go do this thing, is it working for 90 of them? Or does it only work for 5 of them? And those are the case studies you're seeing. So those are my filters. So I don't really care about the marketing channel at all. Over 12 years, I probably have not cared too much. And that's what took me so long to finally come to like, all right, this is just definitively the simplest thing to marketing channel. Number one, get you to $5 million a year. You don't need anything else than that. You just don't. You could do other stuff. Plenty of people do, but you don't need another thing. Anything beyond that, I found over and over and over again for the vast majority of people, including us, actually lowers your chance of success. So when looking at marketing channels, I'm going to produce content that's going to drive people. I'm going to produce a podcast. I'm going to produce like, what's the thing? What's the chance of it actually winning? How hard is it to screw up? Those are just the two primary filters that are running through my head. So for somebody starting out, there's 3 things you need. And these are just the like absolute first principles of getting a client or customer or whatever you got. You need eyeballs. You need people to know you exist. If they don't know you exist, they can't hire you. Then you need their trust. You need their heart. If you don't have trust, they will not hire you, no matter if it's $3 or $300,000 the thing they're purchasing. And the last thing it needs is their wallet. And you got to get them in those orders. And if you try to jump, like there's literally a conference called Traffic and Conversion. It's actually a fantastic conference, how they recommend it. But it's focusing on the ends of the spectrum. It's focusing on eyes and wallets. But if you miss the middle, if you miss trust, if you miss they're actually deeply connected to you as a human, man, everything will be a grind. But if you nail that and you miss the other two pieces, you will win. Like definitively, measurably in your bank account, you will win. And results, because when people trust you, they listen to you. And if they don't trust you, they'll pay you and they'll refund and charge back and all that crap. So like item number one, you got to have those three components. Item number two, for somebody starting out, since that was the origin of the question, there's the most popular product model that's taught. And I think Ryan Deiss popularized it. At least he's the person I learned it from. Digital marketer. Is the Ascension model. Start really low, $9 PDF, $29 course membership, and then work your way up and have a big back end that people can buy from. I've also found that incredibly difficult to do. I've actually never seen, and this is a sample size of a couple thousand people. So the internet's way bigger than that. I've actually never seen, not one time ever. It's probably the only thing I can say this about. I've never seen that work once where somebody had $29 thing, $99 thing, $500 thing, $10,000 thing, and that like all fluidly work together. Not one time have I ever seen not what people say, go behind the business, look at the P&L. Almost every time, 90% comes from one product, not evenly distributed over the course of this thing. It just never works like that. So another key component that we just, again, I don't really care what works. Let's just find that and do that, is the descension model. Don't start at the bottom at Ascension, start at the top. Like sell really expensive things to people that have money, and it's easier to make money. Like you need 10 clients at 10 grand to make 6 figures, 10 total humans overall. So like, what does that do to your marketing plan when you only need 10 people throughout the whole year? Like you don't need lots of eyeballs. Actually, you just need, I don't know, a couple hundred. If you want 7 figures, you need 100 total humans to pay you 10 grand, and you have $1 million business. And man, I've seen people try to sell a $30 course. Math real time is a bad idea. You need thousands and thousands of units of those to make anywhere close to what you would make with just less than a dozen people buying a high ticket offer. So those two components for me, like if my whole business blows up, if you're starting from scratch today, you borrow the people's audiences and you start at the high end and work your way down. And by the way, that's what Elon's done. All of his business is the reason he has the first car company in a century not to go bankrupt that's actually successful, cash flow positive, is because that's what he did. Starlink, that's what he did. All of his businesses do the descension model. He starts at the high end of the market and works his way to entry level after he has a good, profitable, cash flow positive business. And that's like to the max on scale. But same thing applies to whatever business you're trying to run. So those two things together, it's actually hard to screw it up. So if you're starting out, I would start with a high-end coaching offer. It just works fantastically well. Sell to people that have money. They'll buy from you. People that don't have money are way harder to get to give you money than people that do. And instead of trying to create all these marketing systems, just borrow the people's audiences. Those are the two big strategic pieces. If you're starting from today, your success rate, like our success rate of our clients, is over 90% at the 6-month mark. ROI on the money they paid to us, cash into the business, offer from scratch when you do those two things. You can do it with other things, but like, man, there's just a bunch of crap that can go wrong.
So I like a lot of what you're saying. I like especially that in theory, you hear people talking about like an Ascension model. It sounds really good, but in reality, like you couldn't even name a single example where that actually worked out. I'm with you on starting higher, but let me ask you this. When we're talking about like info products, coaching, things like that, it's a totally different business model from Elon Musk, Tesla, Starlink, all that stuff.
Sure.
If you succeed starting at the top, you called it a descension model. Why would you add lower ticket stuff when your high ticket stuff is working really well?
That just goes to owner intent. Like, what do you want? Because you can get to 5 million by borrowing somebody else's audience once a week. There's a couple different versions of that we can go into if you want. Once a week and have a $10,000 coaching offer, or five to 10,000, somewhere in there. You can get to $1 million a year in a year to 2 years, 3 years, depending on your skill level. There's some baked in things, but like you will hit that. It's just like there's not that many things to go wrong with that. Do you want to go higher than that? Do you want to help more people than that? That's up to you. Like you never have to go down market. You can if you want to. I've yet to see the person who goes there too late. It's always too soon. Like I launched this product. It did a lot of money. What's the next product? It's like, that's the wrong question actually, because man, it is hard to get one product to work really well, like really hard to take that to scale and like do that over and over and over for years and years and years with thousands of people. Like actually pretty difficult to do. Trying to do that with 2 products, like you're screwed. Not going to happen. You better, and the place when somebody hires me to come in, especially bigger businesses, and I'm looking at the first question, how many products you have, how big's your team, who owns what? In those 3 questions, you can discern if they should even have a second product or not. I have yet to find the company that should have had a second product. And these are, some of the bigger companies I've worked with are, and the max end of my coaching range is usually about $50 million a year. So 25 to 50. And even them, now you get starting to get above 25. Usually it makes sense to have a second or third product and the teams are robust enough to actually do that and not screw the first one in the process. But like, you're talking like the end of the spectrum on information product businesses. Like you just don't need it. It's like, but what if you didn't do that? You just did more of this. And it's like, and there's always giant opportunity over here that they've just not taken advantage of. So if you're asking those questions, you earn $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, is like literally no. It just knows the answer. It's just, almost never, unless you just want to, great. But no, that's probably going to screw the main thing you're doing. And this won't go all that well. And I've lived that out myself, like firsthand experiences. And then I've noticed that trend in clients as well. And a lot of clients, it's like, it's the same stuff. So you could go down if you wanted to. That's totally up to you. Like if you have a coaching offer, you could go to course. If you have a course, you could go to multiple tiers of courses. You can go to membership. And that just depends, but that would be years and years in. You just don't need it at all.
We can make that decision once we get to that point.
Just get to that point. And they become who questions, not what questions. We're all good. If you get a little bit of traction, you stick around for a few years. You're good at the what. You're good at strategy. You stuck around. You beat 99% of people. But like the trap I see people who get to $2, $3, $4 million in, they get stuck in the what trap. They think every question is a what question. What should I do? And should we do this funnel? Should we add this product? It's like, those are not the questions to ask. The questions at that point are all who questions, because you at that point have outstripped your capacity to execute on whatever the next thing might be, whether that's another marketing channel, another product, or new vertical you want to go into. You can't do it actually, because there's too many things going. You're already juggling too many balls. You can't take another one and actually fully execute on it like you did the first one. So then it becomes who's the team member or team you're going to put in place to do that. If you get like Jim Collins, Good to Great, and he wrote a whole series of books, which is the most extensive business research ever done by any human. Like it's fantastic. And then you can buy all that for $100 is absurd. Like buy his whole suite of books. He came out of like 30 years of studying every company in U.S. history who's gone from good to great. He distilled it down to 10 core concepts that were the differences between the comparison companies, those that didn't and those that did. And the second principle, so the first one is about leadership. The second one was first who, then what. It's where you hear the language. Jim Collins invented it. Get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats on the bus. So once you get past a couple $1 million a year and you've done that for just a second, like it's all who questions. Now before then is what questions, like execution, one simple offer to one target market with one simple channel, and do it for a year. You do that, you'll beat everybody. You'll actually win. And you use BOPA, like use borrowing other people's audience as a high ticket offer, like your chance of success is very high. Then though, you transition to all who questions. It's like, who's going to run the coaching program? Because now we have 300 people in there and I can't coach them all. Who's going to run the marketing channel? Because I can't be sending the pitches. Somebody else has got to do that. And then what's our next marketing channel going to be? I can't do that at all. Somebody else has got to come in. So you then have to learn how to find and entertain good people to go execute on those. Yeah. Which is a whole other.
You're making my job easy, man. I could have just started this conversation, say, go, Bryan, go, start talking.
Stop.
So back to the like complete beginner example, because I mean, not all my audience are complete beginners, but there's certainly plenty of them. A lot of people are, where do I start, right? So let's get very specific.
Yep.
Where do we start? It sounds like you're saying, let's build the product first. Let's build the high ticket product first. That's the first thing we need to do. And if that is what you're saying, The conventional argument against that would be, well, it's not validated. Why would we build something that's not validated yet?
So you need two things. You need to be able to help another person, you had to have received the transformation yourself. If you don't, I think that's the definition of a charlatan. At least you're hypocritical. You're trying to, like, you're a 16-year-old life coach. It's like, bro, you've not lived life. Don't be a life coach. What are you doing? But like, if you have successfully helped other people get clients, just you, sample size of one, you can then go help somebody. Like, that was Jesus's model. He trained up 12 apostles for 3 years, spent every day with them for 3 years. And then he said, hey, now that you've received, you can give. So if you've received, you can give. Just literally sample size of one. Because the most effective case study and story is your own transformation anyway. It's not Tira. My next door neighbor, I coach her. She runs a company called connectioncodes.co. It's actually absolutely fantastic. You should have her on just to talk about that. It will not make sense immediately to people, but anyway, it's a key items skill set. And one of the number one things that sabotage entrepreneurs and people is the thing she helps them with. However, she had never had they've been trying to sell course crap forever, which is great, but it's the typical struggle bus that everybody gets on. I'm like, hey, just stop all of that. Just keep it on the website. If people want to buy, that's fine. Just go to the other end of the market. Go coach, C-level executive females on how to like get out of their own way. Like, they're succeeding in work, but they're sucking in life. Their marriage sucks, or their parenting's fine, not going well. They get disagreements with their friends and whatever. So it's like, great, let's go do that. She's like, cool. What do I have to build? I was like, don't build anything. Just go get 10 people and just coach them and have a call with them once a week and just train them. And that's actually a terrible high ticket model. But like, for your first 10 people, if 10 people paid you $10K, you've made $100,000 and you can figure out 90 days of like having a call with each of them. That's great. That's a perfectly fine starting point. So the great thing with coaching is you don't have to build anything. So what she did with her first client, there's kind of two parts of coaching, two primary parts. You have to knowledge transfer, like teach them, which technically isn't coaching, but you do have to give them information they don't have now. You have to knowledge transfer. So that for her first client, she just recorded all the training sessions. So then the next client, she didn't have to do it live. She just said, watch the recording. And then that allows you to do the thing that's actually coaching, which is applying to your situation. So like, I hear Bryan talking about BOPA, and I understand how I could bother people's audiences to get people. That generally makes sense. But what does that mean for me? Who would I partner with? What do I say? What do I have them promote? How do I turn in the calls? How do I turn it? You just have 1,000 questions. That's where coaching comes in. I can just walk you through how that would work in your exact situation. So for her, she just trained her first client, recorded them all. For next client, she just gave them the training and had a 30-minute question and Q&A call. Like, okay, what do you need help on today? And did great. And she sold a bunch of them. And she'll add some more structure to the program as it goes. But man, people think they have to build a lot of things. That's the thing I love about going high end with coaching. You literally can sell it. You need a 1-page offer, which I'll make a template and give that to people, or give them our template, and you could see the examples of it. Like, literally 1 page, and all that's doing is capturing your understanding of what you do. And you can go sell it tomorrow. You don't need to build anything. If you have Zoom and a scheduler, you can then start coaching people with that, with building nothing. So your validation is, did somebody give you money or not? That's the thing. So yeah, you don't have to build a thing. Just go do it.
You make it sound so simple.
It is simple. It is not. There are things you can screw up. So that is, by the way, if you're thinking about coaching, that's the superpower you can have. You can make it like, our mission is to make it almost impossible to fail to get clients for coaches. So like, our job is to make it really hard to screw up. As a coach, you can do the same thing. Like, if you're really good at marriage and you help marriages or personal finance or parenting or wellness or whatever your thing is, like, all the training in the world, like, your success rate will suck. Go measure the success rate of your book, of your course, of your membership. It's going to be fractions of a percentage point will be your actual success rate, meaning humans that pay you money to get the full-blown result they wanted to get when they bought it. Your success rate will be below a percentage point. With coaching, it can be nearly 100%. That's the thing that really drove me to coaching and helping other coaches, is like, it's the most effective product type that exists. It's actually better than doing it for you, like an agency, because the person learns nothing. And there's lots of things you can't agency. You can't agency a marriage. It's like, no, you just have to learn it and do it right. So I could give you a book on marriage and you won't even read it. You could pay $500 for a course and you'll skim a couple of videos, but not even finish it, much less get the transformation. But if you hire me and pay me 10 grand for coaching on your marriage, and you just don't quit. And it's harder to quit when you pay more, and it's harder to quit a coaching engagement because you have a one-on-one relationship with somebody. Like, man, your marriage is going to get better. So like, how can we scale that? How can we just have more humans in the world that are doing one-on-one discipling in whatever area you're at? Because that actually works. That produces transformation. YouTube videos don't, books don't, courses don't. They have their place. I'm not anti them. But like, what they don't do is produce big transformation. They just don't do that. That's not their function. So more of that, like that works, and that's fun, and that is impactful to lives in like a super practical, tangible way.
How do you feel about one-on-one coaching, which is, it sounds like that's primarily what we're talking about so far, versus group coaching?
If you go to success rate, there's a big difference. People think about church. Think about what church is supposed to be versus what it is. What Jesus modeled was 3 years with 12 dudes. And that produced the most viral idea of all time and the best-selling book of all time. His model produced that. But you go to church today, it's a mile deep and an inch wide. And like, it spread actually. Those 12 people took it to towns where thousands of people, like those people went really wide over time. And very fast, actually. The first century after Jesus died, it's like it had taken over the entire known world. Like the Roman emperor became a Christian. So this isn't about Christians. It's just like, what's effective? And it's like, I don't know. Let's look at that. What is that? Oh, it's the opposite of what church is. Church today is you show up to a place for an hour, watch a good sermon, and you go home and nothing happens and people don't like church. It's like, shocker. Like YouTube's better than church. You can go find the best preacher and listen to the best message, not the crappy local guy who didn't work on a sermon that week. Like, it's not effective. So just measure success rate. How many humans walk into a church and become an actual disciple of Jesus? Not many. A lot of them call themselves Christians. And then on the weekend, they're cussing and binge drinking and sleeping around and watching porn and stuff. It's like, oh, you're not following Jesus. Actually, you just call yourself a Christian. You watch the YouTube sermon. Good job. That's not the point. But what was effective was be discipled for 3 years. Then you will be. So apply that back to group coaching and one-on-one. What I find regularly in group coaching is it's easy to fall through the cracks. What group coaching really is like, here's a course and we have some Q&A calls. And that just doesn't work all that well. It don't work all that well. So, what do? We do the one-on-one coaching can scale really well. It's not easy, but it can. And most people don't even have to get to the scaling part. Most people that hire us and that are listening to this, they want a good 6-figure business. You can do that with 10 people. 10 people to the max, a 30-minute call every other week. That's 5 hours a week of actual coaching time. Maybe some emails, another 5 hours, 10 hours, 6 figures. Yeah, that's the fulfillment of the product. That's all you need. If you want to go to 7, well, maybe you hire a coach or two and you train them up and they do the same thing. Great. You're at 7 figures. Almost no one even really wants to go beyond that. So like, you don't even have a scaling problem. What happens is people start selling group coaching because they imagine all the work that it'll be, and it's not that much work. And then the product kind of sucks and no one refers it and word of mouth doesn't spread. And like, you spent 3 years with 12 people, but they didn't tell anybody about it. So by going deep with just a handful of people, man, the word of mouth and everything spreads. And the answer is bring your most successful student in and have them coach people. They're your best ambassadors and they know the stuff already. Like, training's easy. Just do what you've received. Give what you've received. It works well. So group coaching's fine. And there's place for community and one-on-one coaching. That's a mistake one-on-one coaches make, like marriage counselors. They suck at this. Their success rates are terrible because they think they can come into a room for an hour and just talk to you once a month and that works. It doesn't work all that well. Like, you need community, you need coaching, you need training. You got to have all three of those things if you actually want it to work. So one-on-one coaches could work a lot less because they're like trying to single parent their clients to success, and being a single parent is like the hardest job on the planet. Nothing else is close. And like, the success rate, if you're not in community, is low. It is. Like, single parent without a church community or a community or a family that participates, and like, the chance of that child being a well-adjusted human who doesn't end up on drugs or welfare is very low. But if you put that same financial state, single parent, in a church community or a community or family members, like, the chance of success is super duper high because they have other tent pegs holding the tent down. They don't just have one. So even a one-on-one coach can work drastically less and see success rates go up by a lot if they involve the other people they're coaching. And I'm like, when we go to a marriage counselor, man, I wish there were 5 other people that we could communicate with about this to hear what's working for them, not just this one person. Like, that would be less work for him. I would ask him less questions. I would learn even more. And I would be glued into the community. I'd never want to leave because, like, man, I'm getting so much, kind of real time being taught by him, but also kind of like just in time being taught by these other people as well. So I find kind of combining them as the best approach. Have one-on-one, but have community. And that actually works fantastically well.
I love the analogy with Jesus and his disciples, but that was he was teaching 12 people at the same time, right?
Yep.
He set up a first group of 12 people, right? That wasn't one-on-one. I mean, there were times, but a majority of it was all 13 people together.
Yeah. And if you just read through the gospel narratives, there's not a ton of stories where he's overtly with all 12 at the same time. And there are some, but like Peter, James, and John are with him, and he was super close to 3 of them and super close to John, but then with all 12, like how much time did he spend with Judas? I don't know. But he went deep and had one-on-one relationships with them. And I think that's just throw all coaching business stuff to the side for a minute. Just like I have 3 kids. I'm rarely with them one-on-one. We do carve out specific time for that, but I do have one-on-one relationships with all of them. I do have one-on-one conversations with them, but it's great for them to all be together. It's great for the whole family of 5 to be together. It's great to do one-on-one time, and it's great for them to like learn from each other. So all of those components, like we had this, family minister guy at our church. He left recently, but he was awesome. He'd been in ministry for like 60 years. And most of the people that wind up doing this family ministry stuff are like the 29-year-olds who really don't have a family yet, don't know what they're doing. So we had like a senior dude who had 2 legit kids and a good marriage, and he was like teaching. It was fantastic. But one of the analogies he used was this tent peg analogy. Like imagine a tent going through a storm and it just has one rope tied to one stake. That's what it's like if your kids only have you and your mom. It's like they're screwed. They're not going to last through the storm because there'll be times where they don't want to listen to you. Like they're going through puberty or going to college. It's like there's going to be times like his kids were Isaac and Austin. He's like, right now they don't come to me. They don't. And that's fine because I know I've surrounded them with people that are like the other tent pegs in their life. So they kind of rotate through that. So same thing with Jesus. I don't know if Judas is going to Jesus, but Jesus had a one-on-one relationship with them. I have a one-on-one relationship with my kids. It doesn't mean everything I do is in one-on-one setting. Rarely is one-on-one setting there. And that's totally fine. I think the anchor point is, and this is the case with coaching and borrowing other people's audience. This is the common thread between the two. If you optimize not for eyes or for wallet, but you optimize for the heart, deep personal connection, that's where actual transformation happens. Whether it's on coaching transformation or whether it is hiring you. As we've optimized not for volume of eyes or volume of conversions, neither one, but we've optimized for how many hearts have we deeply connected for today, this week, this month. Man, the biggest explosion in our business that's ever happened as we have done that. Same thing in coaching. It's like the programs are fine, like churches focus on, programs and all this crap, and it's fine, I guess. But like, if you're not connecting deeply and personally, like no transformation is going to happen. Your dudes are all going to be addicted to porn and the women are all going to be beating up their husbands. It's like, that's just going to happen. That's going to be the trend. But if you deeply connect and get them deeply connected to Jesus, like transformation will actually happen. You can't not. You can have sucky programs that don't happen. So to me, if you optimize for deep personal connection, that doesn't mean you have to spend 17 hours a day with each person. I don't do that. I can't do that with my kids or my clients. There's too many of them, but I can optimize my actions for that. And transformation happens there.
So given everything and everything we've talked about, design for me the perfect coaching program. What does it look like?
Okay. So I'll plug a few resources for people. So growthtools.com/Hopkins. We'll have a page there. I'm going to put a handful of things there. A template for an offer. Everything starts with your own understanding of the problem that you solve for clients, how you do it, the price of it, and your deliverables. So I'll give you a template and 3 examples of just a couple different clients. You can go check it out, look through it a little bit. I'll also give a little 1-hour video talking through different coaching program structures. I'll try to do a service here in a short amount of time, but go there. I've done trainings on this. We have them recorded. Just go there and watch them. They're free. And you can start looking for yourself. Okay. So the ideal program structure. Again, I'm optimizing for a couple points here. It's easy to do, easy to fulfill on my end. It can't be super complicated. It can't take a ton of hours. But it has to deeply connect and it has to actually work. So it has to hit all 3 of those things. And what I find with people when they go to a program structure, the first thing it optimizes for is themselves, and then never really have a true measurement on client success. So they actually never know if it works. They do know due to their refunds and chargebacks and can't get clients and no word of mouth, but like people don't hit those acutely. So it's easy and it works. Those are the two optimization points. So there's an acronym that we use kind of when we're teaching and helping our clients, because we work on all of this with every client that comes in. It's like, if they have a program structure, it usually sucks and is either laborious or doesn't work, or both of those things, which is the worst. It's the double loss. So three key pieces that we suggest people do. And this is, you could think about this like a grab bag. Principle number one, optimize for deep personal connection. If you just do your best at that, whatever structure optimizes for that is doable by you and works for them is fine. So that's the first principle. Second principle is there's three big buckets of items to think within. How you do these can vary. It needs to match with you. You can do it. You enjoy it, all that stuff. So PTA. P stands for a plan. T stands for training. And A stands for advising. So the program, ideally, if you want results and efficient, it needs to do all three of those things. When they come in, let's say your personal finances are a disaster and you hire a personal finance coach. Awesome. Most, like, that's too long of a story. Ideally, what you would get is a plan to go from where you're at now to where you want to go. And everybody wants some version of, as a personal finance coach, you would know this. And as a human, you know this. I want to be financially free. I want to have no debt. I want to have a good emergency fund. I want to be able to live a reasonable lifestyle. I mean, 99% of people want that. Some variation of that. Their numbers might be different. Most people haven't thought about it that much. But everybody comes, the destination's the same, but the starting point is highly varying. You might start in New York. You might start in Tampa. You might start in Omaha, Nebraska. All of you are going to San Diego, but you're coming from different points. So your actual path is going to vary. So the first big thing with coaching, and man, you could make a great business, not even coaching, just selling plans, legit plans. That's a good business, actually. Your results aren't going to be there, though. That's the sucky thing. You can't just sell that because people suck at executing the plan. So that's where the other things come into play. But people pay way more money than you would ever imagine. And it's a very easy thing to sell. In fact, in some ways, it's easier to sell than coaching.
Real quick, Bryan, when you say plans, are you talking about personalized, individualized plans?
Yeah. Now, you can get them to the point, like we have basically a template now that doesn't take all that long. For us, it's fairly simple to create. For the client, it is highly custom, 15 pages long, and covers every aspect of what they need to do. It's the detailed MapQuest directions from New York City to San Diego, California, every street to turn, every hotel to stay in, and every restaurant to eat along the way. It's that. And there's like a shock and awe factor when somebody gets it. It's really good. Now, it doesn't take that long to make for us because we've made thousands of them. So we know what the plan needs to include. We know how to handle all the scenarios. So we've gotten efficient at it. P, plan. Personal plan to go from where they're at to where they're going to go. So when they come in, before you can even met it, you got to ask them questions. So usually our fulfillment on that looks like an hour-long call to ask them a bunch of questions. What are your goals? Where do you want to go? Why is that the goal? What about the spout? All that stuff. And then about an hour to take everything they've said, put it into a plan and send it to them. And that is the first big aha moment the person has, because it is the first time probably ever in their life, but definitely in this particular situation, that someone has sat down, listened to them, asked them good questions, paid attention, and made them a legit plan. And before you can coach something, you got to know where they're coming from and where they're going. The T is training. Now, there's going to be things they're going to have to do to execute that plan that they don't know how to do right now. That's not coaching. That's technically teaching. So you got to get the information from your head to their head. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. I mean, the two primary are you can either do it live, and that's great to do the first time because then you record them and then you can use it the other type the second time, which is recording. So whatever they need when they need it, just send them a recording of it or teach it live, whatever you want to do. I don't care. We do both actually in our program. We teach live every week. And if you can't get there live, we have the recordings. We found that to be optimized for deep personal connection. It's slightly harder to do, but works great. The third one is advising. When they need help, how do they get it? Because they're going to get stuck for sure. They've never driven a car before. So taking a cross-country road trip is like, how's the stick shift work? The tire's flat. I took a wrong turn. You get that stuff. It makes sense to you because you've seen it 1,000 times. Doesn't make sense to them. So they just need a way to ask you questions. And you can do that a variety of ways. You get to pick. Like, asynchronous. Do you want to be able to like ask questions individually via email, or do you want to post it to some kind of community where you answer as well? The same thing applies. They can ask a question and you answer it. You just pick which one you want to do. I don't really care. And then the synchronous version, like when we talk, how do we talk? Do we talk one-on-one on a Zoom call privately? Do we have like group, like office hours that anybody can come to? How does it work? None of that will affect sales at all. Just do the one that feels about right to you, because all of it will equal even if the other 11 apostles there, I'm going to be having a conversation with Judas because he's the guy that showed up today. We're going to be talking about his money problem. Right? So great. And the other people get to hear from it. And that's actually good because they get to learn from somebody else. So those are the three components. You just get to pick which ones are great. And I'll include a resource that has a picture of that and some samples of different programs and how they work. None of that will affect sales. Whatever configuration of that you want, a plan, teaching, and they got to be able to ask questions some kind of way. Do the one that feels about right to you because you can sell it no matter the configuration. And that will get results. As long as you have those components to it, you'll actually get results and have a very high success rate.
All right, I'm taking notes, Bryan, and you had mentioned 1, deep personal connection, 2, this PTA thing, plan, training, advising. What was number 3?
Well, 4, how should you structure a coaching program? A plan, training of some sort, either recorded or live, and a way to get advice from you, advising. So, do you want it private or public? The questions you ask and the calls you have, do you want all those happen one-on-one with you? Or do you want to happen public, like in office hours in a community type setting? Either one. We actually have gone towards public calls and public question answering because the connection's still there, but everybody else gets to learn from it because they get to see it. And it's easier to fulfill. We did one-on-one for a long time, and this actually had a higher success rate and better experience for clients. So if you're making a coaching program, those are the 3 buckets you get to pick within. You just pick which version of that you want. But what you sell when you get on a call with somebody is like, hey, I'm going to make a custom plan. I'm going to train you. And I'm going to make sure that I'm right there beside you the entire time. And anytime you get stuck, I'm going to help. Anytime you get close to a pit, I'm going to steer you away. And when you have questions you want to ask me about, I'm right there. And what that really means is I'm going to have a call a week, office hours, and you can post your question and I'll answer. That's it. And it's a great experience for them. It'll make sure they're able to travel the plan. It'll make sure they know how to do it as they go through. So PTA, a plan, training, advising.
Got it. So once again, you're making it sound very, very simple. If somebody's listening to this, they're like, I thought I was going to put a course together, but Bryan's convincing me I need to go more high ticket coaching. Great. Let's jump to back to that BOPA thing. All right. If somebody's listening to this, they're on board. It's like, all right, how do what are your best tips for starting to borrow other people's audiences?
Yeah. So before you can coach somebody's got to hire you. So that's the first problem is get hired. Second problem is don't be an idiot while coaching them. So have a good coaching program. So how to get hired? So you need the 3 things. You go back to eyes, hearts, and wallets. Those are the 3 mechanics that have to happen. The easiest way I've found is to get other people that already have the eyes, hearts, and wallets of the people to just tell them, go hire them. So for example, let's use a not marketing example. Then we'll go to one that we did last week, just so you have the super relevant one. We'll put up maybe a full case study, that link as well for people. So nobody knew that Robert Kiyosaki existed. Now he has one of the best-selling financial books of all time called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Nobody knew he existed. He had no eyes, no hearts, no wallets. Basically the Joe Rogan of the 90s invited him on her show. And after an hour of conversation with them, Robert Kiyosaki blew up and sold 5 million copies of his book. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about all this publicly. He attributes all of his success in selling that book, which is now ubiquitous. Almost everybody knows about the book, to one appearance on Oprah's show. So Oprah's like Joe Rogan of today. Everybody knows about her, millions of listeners every day. What happened there was Robert didn't have an audience at all. Nobody knew about him. He had no audience to give Oprah. She didn't need an audience. But what he had was something Oprah didn't have, which is some legit financial advice. Same thing for Dr. Phil. Literally the same thing. Nobody knew Dr. Phil existed. Now he has the longest running show in daytime TV history. And the inflection point was going on Oprah's show. Dr. Phil didn't have an audience, but he did have something Oprah didn't have, was Oprah isn't a parent and isn't married. And Dr. Phil is a marriage and family therapist. And a lot of the people that watched Oprah's show needed marriage and parenting advice. So Oprah brings Dr. Phil on to share his expertise. What's the transformation that Dr. Phil had had? He had raised good kids and had a good marriage. So we went on Oprah's show and just taught her audience how to do that. And as a result, he now acquires the eyes, the hearts, and the wallets that Oprah had. They're transferred over. That's what had happened when Noah invited me to teach his audience how to grow an email list to 100 people. I mean, that's a really low bar. You can do that like in a week. In retrospect now, almost anybody can do that in a week. I just went and shared my little expertise with Noah's audience. Thousands of people opted in for our list, hundreds of thousands of dollars bought. So what happens there? Noah had a blog for like 10 years prior to that, talking to him every day, sharing cool stuff with him. He had a lot of eyes, a lot of hearts, a lot of wallets. I could either build that from scratch which is the build an audience approach. Go build it all from scratch. Very hard. It's just time consuming and long. Most people won't stick with it long enough. Or I could just like step into the audience that Noah has spent 10 years building and just borrow all of that. That's just easier. Like that's what Robert Kiyosaki did. Oprah had tens of millions. He couldn't build that audience if he wanted to. He stepped into Oprah's audience, tens of millions of eyeballs, tens of millions of hearts, and Robert got 5 million measured wallets to sell his book. So instead of trying to build all of that, just borrow it. And the cool thing that happens along the way is you actually get to build your own audience as well. Like when Noah promoted me, a couple thousand people went to the website and opted in and eventually bought stuff somehow. There was no coherent marketing funnel anywhere, but like that happened in that work. So if you're just starting out, like first there is understanding you have 2 models you can go down. Both of them can work. You can build an audience, you can borrow audience. You can't do both of those things. So first pick a model. Do you want to build it all from scratch? Or do you want to borrow mine, borrow Jacques, borrow Noah's? I mean, I'll raise my hand. If you have something relevant that entrepreneurs have a problem with, please pitch me. Bryan@growthtools.com. We will promote you. We need people to promote, and I want you to promote me. Let's do it. So if you're just starting out, step 1 is like, pick a model. Which one do you want to do? Do you want to build it all from scratch and become a marketing expert? Or do you just want to like share the most helpful stuff you've ever learned with people for free? And 100% of those people will hire you to coach them. If so, like fully go down that path. And we can talk to the mechanics of how to do that, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about next. I mean, it's very clear on the whys, right? You used a massive example of these big name people we know today getting on Oprah, the Joe Rogan of the time. But it's not so easy to today get on Joe Rogan, right? Mm-hmm. What is the how? Like, how do we go about identifying the right audiences to get in front of and then actually doing it?
So step 1 is make your dream 100. Like, who are the 100 email list, podcasts, YouTubers that you would love to have promote you? Who are those people? And aim for people like 1 or 2 rungs above you. If you're in the personal finance space and have a list of 1,000 people, don't put Dave Ramsey on your list. Like, save him for later. You can actually legitimately do that, but like, that's not going to be this year. So step 1 is like, who do you want to promote you? I'll put a few prompts, Jacques, in the /Hopkins link. For people, like it's a 1-pager of like some Google search queries that people can just type in. Like one of my favorites is, the top blogs on whatever your topic is, the top finance blogs of 2024. Like if you're in the finance space, just go first find out who they are. And there's a few exercises you can do. That's probably TMI for here to find like what we call shoulder industries, like people that like my friend Tira, who teaches like emotional regulation and how to not be an idiot when you get hit with like anger or fear or something. And that's the top thing that entrepreneurs struggle with. I would never think me and Tira could do a partnership, but it would totally work. Like I could have her on our list, interview her, promote her, and a ton of entrepreneurs would hire her. Vice versa. They have a list of about 30,000 people. Like, and I don't know how many of them business owners, but they have business owners on there, and there's aspiring people that would want to start an online thing. So our promotion would work well. That's a shoulder industry. It's another problem that your target best fit client has that maybe not be your exact one. So all that to say, I'll give you a few prompts in the link that'll kind of get your mind going on different industries that you would not think would make sense, but do. But the easiest place to start is like, you tell me, who do you want to promote you? Because I have found like we have, over 2,000 people that we've taught to do this. The yes rate, the percentage of people pitched that then said yes is 35%. Meaning if you pitched 100 people, hey, Jacques, I'd love for you to promote a resource of ours and us promote a resource of yours. And there's various formats we could do that in. Would you be interested? If you asked 100 people that question, 35 will say yes. You have 35 people now ready to promote you. So step 1, getting the yes is the easy part. You need a basic approach to saying it so you don't sound like a weirdo. But like first, decide who you want. Second, write a coherent email that they read and say yes to. We have a particular format to that. We can go into details of that. I'll include a copy of that template as well in the /Hopkins link. I need to write these down so I actually remember what I'm doing. So I'll include a link of the template, a link of some search queries. So people can just go try. Again, we give away all our tools and training. So just go try it. If you want me to help you, you know where to find me. So first, make a list. Second, say something to them that gets them to say yes. Just tell them what you want to do. Prove you're not a weirdo. Tell them what the win is for them. So if I'm pitching you, Jacques, I might say, hey, Jacques, I would love for us to do a resource swap. I got, this BOPA thing. I got like a free little cheat sheet that'll show people how to do that. I'd love for you to promote that. And I'd love to promote your thing that helps them create their course. Would you be interested? Because our people are interested in courses as well. And I'm not anti-selling them. It's not the most efficient path to revenue for most people, but like, that's fine. And if I said that in a way that showed you the win for you, it's like, hey, you'd probably pick up several hundred new email subscribers and probably some customers as a result, and you get exposure to a new audience. Would you be interested? If I said it that way, like, you would say yes. And then the last part is just execute the promotion really well. So make sure that the partner actually does the thing. Now, a tricky part for people that are starting off is they don't have an audience. So just like Dr. Phil and Robert Kiyosaki, just like me with Noah, I had no audience to bring to Noah. Dr. Phil and Robert had no audience to bring to Oprah. So if you're starting at nothing, this is an even better place to start, because everything else equals a lot more time and a lot more money. SEO or YouTube or content or ads or whatever, like, the time horizon is way longer. The time horizon here is short. The thing that changes is what you say in about 2 sentences of your pitch. So instead of saying to Jacques, hey, Jacques, you could get a couple hundred email subscribers from an exposure to a new audience, what I would say is, hey, I've noticed one topic you haven't covered on your show. Loved your show. Let me see if I can draft the email real time. If I'm reaching out to you with no audience, Jacques, hey man, I found your show about a month ago. I love it. I've listened to 4 episodes. My favorite so far is that one with Bryan. I love that thing about the high ticket offer deal. Like, that really spoke to me. In fact, again, this is all just proving you're not a weirdo. In fact, I went and like drafted my high ticket offer based on that template that Bryan shared in the podcast. And I just want to say thank you. If that's the first half of your email, whatever comes next, Jacques is going to read. So then you say, hey, Jacques, I noticed one thing you haven't addressed on the podcast yet that a lot of course creators have a problem with is insert your topic. So if I'm Tira, maybe I'm Tira pitching you and she didn't have an audience at all, and she helps people like with emotional regulation stuff. I noticed one topic you haven't talked about is the mind game of being an entrepreneur. You talked a lot about tactical stuff, and that's awesome. You got to do that. But one part you haven't addressed is when you get covered up in fear and emotion and anger, how do you not do stupid things and tank your business? And that's something I've mastered for myself, and that's made all the difference. I would love to come on and be interviewed by you. Are you interested? The yes rate of a pitch like that is very, very high. I didn't say all I'm doing is filling a content gap. Again, just like I did with Noah on the list, just like Dr. Phil did with marriage and parenting therapy, just like Robert Kiyosaki did with finance. The person doesn't have the expertise and maybe hasn't covered the expertise. I have no audience to bring, so I can't talk about that, but I can talk about the content gap. I can talk about the thing that I can talk about that they haven't covered as directly as I could. Now, once you have an audience, use that too. It's just another bullet in the gun for you. So use both if you have them. I do, so I do. But like we have the 35% yes rate. The vast majority of those clients don't have an audience. They're just finding the content gap and telling them the win for them is, I'm going to cover this topic for your audience, and that's going to endear them to you.
When I got started in 2013 with piano, I started putting YouTube videos out there, made a piano course, all that. And the sheer act of teaching piano online was kind of enough for me to stand out from the crowd. Today, standing out's a lot harder. The amount of online piano creators is overwhelming. And so I wanted to ask you about, how to stand out today. It sounds like you kind of addressed it there. Like when we're trying to get on other people's audiences, we have to kind of identify that thing that most other people aren't talking about that we can talk about that offers value. Is that the key to standing out today?
Yeah, because you can either, I love that. I just wrote down that phrase because I think that's maybe a simpler way to describe this. You can stand out by trying to attract a crowd to you and put the spotlight on yourself. Or you can stand out by Oprah just saying like, pay attention as she sticks the spotlight on you. And like whoever the spotlight's on is who stands out. So like right now on this podcast, I'm standing out, not the last 3 guests, because the spotlight's on me as you listen to the show. So I don't really have to do anything other than have an area that I've been transformed in and tell you about it. Areas that I've been transformed in is how do you get clients and how do you make this thing actually work? So I'm just going to talk about that. So when you borrow other people's audiences, you don't have to even consciously think about that because the partner promotes you. They put the spotlight on you. So none of the normal stuff. You don't have to find the differentiation. You don't have to figure out the right brand. You just actually don't need it because they do it for you.
What would you say to the person who is like, I don't think I want to do coaching. Like I'm really all in on this course thing. I like the idea of the passive income. If I sell a $500 course and I can sell 20 to 30 of those a month, I'm doing great. What are the downsides to that or the reasons you would advise somebody not to go down that path?
Well, I would say if somebody's fully dedicated to doing that, go for it. Like I'm not going to talk you out of a thing that your heart is totally in. What I would do is present like the pros and cons of high ticket versus low ticket, the Ascension model versus descension model, and then invite somebody into, man, high ticket is harder to screw up. And if they lean that way, we'd go down that route. But if they're like, hey man, like I'm just totally in on this. I hear what you're saying. makes sense, but just like, I feel called to do this. I'm like, great, let's go do it. The same thing still is in effect. It's going to be more challenging. You're going to need way more eyeballs because you can't just sell 10. You're going to have to sell 1,000 to actually make the math work. And to sell 1,000 is harder than selling 10. So as long as you're up for that game and you're willing to play it, then great. And I would still go out and borrow other people's audiences because you still got to have the eyes, hearts, and wallets to do it. And I would just say the pitfalls would be you have to sell a lot more. Your marketing skills are going to have to be higher. Those are the two main things, like your copywriting ability, your sales page, like there's an asset that has to exist. And maybe that's a hot spot between, high ticket and lower ticket. With lower ticket, you rely on copywriting and a sales page. That's where the conversion actually happens. And that better be really good. On high ticket, you rely on a conversation. And that's way harder to screw up. Because as long as you get yourself out of thinking you have to sell somebody and you just ask them a handful of, like, there's 4 coaching questions we ask on a sales call, and that's it. That's the whole call. As long as you can ask 4 questions and just have a good conversation with somebody, it's the equivalent of a sales page. So on high ticket, your sales page is a live conversation with somebody. On low ticket, it's going to be one of the hardest marketing assets to make, which is a full blown sales page. So you'll need to get good at that, which you can. That's a conquerable skill, but it's just a little bit harder and a little less native to most people because most people haven't learned copywriting, haven't learned how to properly assemble a sales page, all the different parts of it and how to do that. And you still have to have, with that, you got to have that asset that you don't have over here. The other thing you need is a legit source of traffic. So you do have to solve that problem. I would solve it even for that same person with other people's audience traffic. But if you get on the track of SEO or ads or content, which is a version of SEO, you just will have to fully sign up know what that game is and fully sign up to play that. And you have to create the spotlight for yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you there. You have to play the algorithms versus play somebody else's list that's promoting you.
So I want to spend the last couple of minutes we have here talking about some of the things you have to offer. Let's start on the free side. And of course, you shared this, you're sharing some of these resources very generously, growthtools.com/Hopkins. But let's talk about Growth Tools, the software. What are some of the tools that you have to offer? If somebody's listening to this, I want to check out some of Bryan's free software tools. What are they and how are they going to help me?
Probably the 2 of the most helpful and relevant to this conversation. We have one that's called attract.io. And it's a free resource builder. So when you borrow other people's audiences, you got to have a thing that they promote, a thing they share. One of the easiest ways to do that is a resource swap, like literally having a 3-page cheat sheet on how to, create your high ticket offer, a 3-page cheat sheet on how to get your finances in order in the next few days. And the other person to email that out. That's the simplest thing to do. Attract.io helps you make that. It's a lead magnet creator, a little resource builder. It has a handful of templates and makes it designed up really nice where you're proud of it, not embarrassed by it, and gives you some interesting ways to share it. So Attract.io is relevant. The other one that's probably relevant with this conversation is Drip Scripts. It is a email sequence builder that helps you put together like your welcome sequence, your sell sequence, and that kind of thing. So when people, like for example, when y'all go to /Hopkins, growthtools.com/Hopkins to get the free resources I mentioned, you'll enter your email address to get them. And then I'll send you a handful of emails that just gives you the resources, tells you a little bit about it, and then invites you into a conversation with us if you want to be coached by us. So what is that sequence? What are the things I say in the email? Drip Scripts gives you the templates and an easy way to use that for yourself for welcome sequences or launch sequences or webinar sequences or any of the different email automated sequences you would need in an online business. It helps you do that really easily. So those are the 2 that probably make the most sense for this conversation.
Those are completely free.
Yep, totally free.
All right. And then last, tell me about your coaching program. Who's your ideal customer? Who do you specifically help and what do you help them achieve?
Yeah. So if you want clients for a coaching or consulting business, we help you with that. We make it almost impossible to fail at getting clients for your program. And we do that by installing a high ticket offer and helping you borrow other people's audiences. So we have a marketplace of now about 5,000 people that have raised their hands and said, hey, I would love to do a list swap with somebody else. I'd love to promote somebody and they promote me. So when our clients come in, we give them the training, we give them the plan, we give them coaching. But one of the superpowers we have is we have this growing group of people, 5,000 people that have already said, I want to do that. So one of the ways we've created quick wins for our clients that makes it work for the fastest, as soon as they come in, we just match them with other people in our marketplace that have said, I want to do it. Because our goal is just get you a client from this marketing channel as quick as possible. Once you get your first client for bottom people's audiences, like you'll be off into the races, and the level of dropout is low. So we're optimizing everything for how can they do that the quickest. And honestly, whether you're starting out or whether you're at $1 million a year, if you are currently doing random acts of marketing, the RAM business model, I'm like, heard this thing, I'm trying that, heard this thing, I tried that, I'm going to experiment, I'm going to test. All that means random acts of marketing. What it really means, we're going to give you your first consistent, predictable marketing channel you've ever had. And there's other stuff we do after that. Once you get that up and going, great. We can do some other marketing channels to grow beyond that. But like most people don't need that. They need their first real one that is light and easy and works. I can put this many hours in and out the other side comes 10 clients a month. Yes, that's what we do. So whether you're starting out, whether you're at $1 million a year, if you need a consistent, predictable marketing channel, what we talked about today, having high ticket and barring other audiences interested, like there's not a better setup for that because we literally match people that have already said yes. We give you all the training, all the coaching, and a personal plan to actually make that happen. So that's our program. It's called Growth University. I'll put a link at the /Hopkins page, growthtools.com/Hopkins for people, if they want to talk to us about doing that. And we host, trainings every week. So if you're on our list, jump in when you go to that link. Every week I do live free trainings to everyone, to our audience, talk about high ticket, talk about BOPA, talk about a couple other core things we teach. And you can kind of get a feel for me, get a feel for the coaching team and see if maybe we could be a good fit to hire and to help you.
Are there any prerequisites to working with you to be at a certain level?
Revenue range, no. We have, this is kind of interesting. We, instead of thinking of an avatar, this is kind of a teaching point and sharing point at the same time. We have like a best fit client profile. So, there's kind of 3 parts. Like you think of a sliding scale from 0 to 10. 0 to 4 is called a reject prospect. Like we just don't work with them. And then there's the middle group, which is the accept bucket. Like we'll work with you, but we're not trying to actively attract that person. And then there's the attract bucket. And that's who we do all of our sales and marketing to. Like that's the person we're really trying to find. If we get this person, great, we'll work with them. If we get this person, we're going to, if you hire us and we realize you're that person, we're going to fire you. But more likely than not, you're just never going to get way down that line. Like we know we can't help you. So what's interesting to do, and we do this is one of the first things we do with clients. We help them define their offer clearly, define their best fit client avatar, and then make their marketing plan. And they've almost never gone through those exercises before. So it's really revealing. If you think about like one of the best questions you can ask yourself, or who is my attract client, is who's the best client I've ever had? And just profile them. Economic, but that's usually the least helpful, oddly enough. But our attract client, does or really wants to do coaching. They are very much interested and very intrigued by barring other people's audiences. Our attract client is already doing at least $40,000 or $50,000 a year. And our accept bucket is 0. And there's a couple mindset things that we've tried to define and try to discover through the process as well. Like, are you coachable? And a way to assess that, which is an interesting thing, because you can't just ask, are you coachable? Everybody will say yes. And that's not the case. An interesting way to assess that in a sales call or an application or in a webinar or any kind of setting is like, are they asking questions? Prideful people never ask questions. Humble people ask questions. Humble people are coachable. Prideful people they'll hire you to coach them, but they're disasters. So one thing we want to know is, will you accept advice? Do you really actually want coaching? So that's a thing in our attract and accept bucket. If you're not, then we put you in the reject bucket. That's a soft skill thing to evaluate. So we have 2 hard skill, 2 soft skill things. They're like the primary evaluation points for an attract. And you can have like 2 or 3 of those and be accept, but if you have none of them, you're a reject client. So what we found is, at least for the problem we're trying to solve, we won't cut it off by revenue. One of those though is like, you have to have the money. You have to be able to afford it. And our price point, starting point, can be very low. We work people to that point, but yeah. Anyway, so it's rarely about money. It's more about when we invite you into BOPA and high ticket offer, are you drawn to that? And then, are you coachable? And the soft skill thing is, do you have a heart to want to actually solve a problem for other people? Or are you only really just interested in making money for yourself? So those are our 2 soft skill things we try to evaluate. And that one's probably the hardest of all of them. But like, is this truly pure 4-hour work week for you? The fewest amount of hours and the most amount of money with helping the fewest amount of people possible. And everything is optimized for that. Or when we help you discover the problem you were uniquely built to solve, do you lean into that? So like an actual mission-driven entrepreneur that is coachable, that is drawn into high ticket and BOPA, like that's the perfect client for us. Economic doesn't matter. Country doesn't matter. All that stuff doesn't matter. Those are the 4 things. If you have those 4 things, you will win. And our relationship will be great. If you're missing 1 or 2, it's questionable. If you're missing like 3, there's no chance we can help you. But that's how we think about it. And throughout hopefully teaching a better model of thinking of best fit client, that's who our best fit client is.
Bryan, it's been a pleasure, man. This was super helpful, super valuable, coming at this from a totally different angle. Like I said earlier, this is normally where we throw out some calls to action. I think we've sufficiently done that at this point. I think it should be pretty clear where people should head. And of course, I'll add that in my intro and outro as well. So, I mean, you just kind of, I throw one thing out there and you run with it. So I'll do that one last time, like for this audience, right? Who's primarily thinking about courses, but certainly memberships and high ticket coaching program is on their radar as well. For this type of audience, I mean, anything else you want to share that hasn't come up yet?
Yeah. If you're leaning in towards the high ticket, the descension model versus Ascension, maybe a way for you to think about it if you're coming from a coaching frame is what about a high ticket course versus a low ticket course? Instead of charging $100, what if you charge $5,000? And what would that mean? Because it's probably going to look something like what we described today. So yeah, I would just give them an open invitation. Like, are the things we talked about interesting? If not, that's clarifying. You can take it off the table. If it is interesting, you want to lean in more, go to growthtools.com/Hopkins and you can start playing around. Like if you go into a store and you see a coat that you like, you don't just immediately buy it off the rack. Like you never do that actually. You put it on and you go look in the mirror and see what it looks like. So growthtools.com/Hopkins is that. Go try it on. See what a high ticket offer would look like for you. See who some partners that could promote you would be. And if that makes sense, like go do it. And if you want help, hire us. We'll help you and it'll be easier. And if not, great. You got a lot more clarity. You're going to be doing the Ascension model and go do that. The next thing would be intentionally pick one marketing channel, not 6, not 3, 1. What's the one way you're going to get eyes, hearts, and wallets? Just one offer, one marketing channel, one type of client for a year. You do that, you'll win.
Amazing. Bryan, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, brother.
Obviously, Bryan is a huge believer in the BOPA, or borrowing other people's audiences strategy. I've used that strategy to get featured on some pretty big podcasts, and I really should be using it more than I do because it's been very, very effective. After that conversation, he really has me thinking I should be stressing that strategy more when it comes to building or growing your audience. But when I really think about it, I think that BOPA plus one main content marketing channel might be the best bang for your buck route to go in terms of building and growing an audience. All right, that's probably going to be the last time I say BOPA here in this episode. Like I said in the intro, this was a really, really good one. I appreciate Bryan so much for reaching out and sharing so much value. Remember to head to growthtools.com/Hopkins for all the free resources that he mentioned. And if you want to go straight to my free training as well on starting and growing your successful online course business, for that, head to oc.show/workshop. That's a free workshop I put together. I share with you the formula that I've uncovered after 11 years of running my own successful course business teaching piano, as well as the past 7 years of interviewing other successful course creators on this podcast. There are common threads among those that are successful with this stuff, and I share it all with you in that free workshop at oc.show/workshop. I hope to see you on that workshop. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to take action. Don't just listen. Take action on what you heard today. I'm rooting for you.